We expect our political leaders to show the decency and humanity and the courage to stand up at this moment and be counted. We need a ceasefire now and to end the siege of Gaza, and we need a serious political commitment to end the ongoing occupation of Gaza and the West Bank, so that Palestinians and Israelis can work alongside the international community to bring a lasting peace to their communities. There's a couple of announcements I need to make before the speakers start. This event was organised by the Bath Campaigns Network and Bath Friends of Palestine. And the University of Bath Islamic Society supported by Bath Stop War, Rethinking Security, Bath Trade Union Council, Bath Mosque and Amnesty. Please, if everyone can go on to social media and follow Bath Friends of Palestine, Bath Campaigns Network and the other groups. There's an event on the 17th of November, a speaker, a young journalist who has tragically lost 23 members of his family, his beloved father, his brothers, his sisters and all their children in an Israeli bomb 2 weeks ago, and he'll be speaking at the event, the Bath Friends of Palestine event, on the Friday the 17th of November, so if people could look at that and attend that, that would be a really important event. He has a PhD in Palestine Studies at Exeter, and his colleague is Inlam Pape. I also just want to say at 1 o'clock today there'll be a 1-minute silence to remember all of those that have been affected, killed and are suffering from the violence that has been happening, whatever their nationality, ethnicity or religion. Thank you.
Hello and welcome. I am Imran Ahmed. I represent the Bath Friends of Palestine. I am also a PhD student at Exeter as well under Inlam Pape. First of all, I'd like to reiterate the thanks to everyone for being here. I'm sure, like me, everyone is here to show their opposition to the appalling assault on Gaza, and increasingly on the West Bank, which has unfolded over the last few weeks. The shutting off of water, electricity and humanitarian aid. The bombing of Gazan civilian areas, notably hospitals and refugee camps. The refusal of the Israeli government to allow UN delegates visas to observe what is happening. The severing of communications with the people of Gaza. The increased settler violence towards the Palestinians in the West Bank. The stories of Palestinian parents writing their children's names on their sons' and daughters' arms in case the worst should happen and they cannot be identified. In the past few weeks, the UN has voted on several resolutions which called for pauses in the violence to allow humanitarian aid to enter the Gaza Strip and for outright ceasefires. The US and UK governments have consistently voted against or abstained from the passing of these resolutions. This has resulted in a continuation of the onslaught of the Palestinian people. The language used by the Israeli officials has exposed their intention in plain sight of the world. The Israeli president's statement, and I quote, "There are no innocent civilians in Gaza," was further made plain by the Israeli Defense Minister, who said, "We are fighting against animals, not people," adding to the dehumanization of the Palestinian people, which serves to justify their extermination, not as humans, but as animals. But perhaps the most explicit verbalization of intention came from Benjamin Netanyahu, who recently quoted a passage from the Hebrew Bible, in which Israelites are encouraged to wipe out their enemies, the Amaleks. He read, "Now go and smite Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have, and spare them not, but slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and donkey. This has exposed what many have argued for decades. This is not a dispute between two equal sides fighting an equally weighted conflict. This is a settler colonial project in which the Zionists wish to expel or wipe out the indigenous population, the Palestinians, from the land. We have seen this happen to the First Nations in North America and the Aborigines in Australia, and we know what the result is. The result is what we are witnessing now, the ethnic cleansing and genocide which our politicians and mainstream media wantonly ignore. If you have read the recent resignation letter of Craig Mockenheimer, the Director of Human Rights at the New York office for the UN, which cited the wholesale slaughter of the Palestinian people as a textbook case of genocide, or Amnesty International's report outlining war crimes and the wiping out of entire families, I highly recommend you take a look. We simply cannot ignore what is becoming clear in front of us. We must act. Until recently, I was a history teacher. Until recently, I was a history teacher for 15 years. As such, I'm all too familiar with how easy phrases like never again and we must learn from history trip off people's tongues. What these phrases mean in practice is that when we see atrocities unfolding, we must stand up and we must speak out. Eloquently put by Desmond Tutu, if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. Being here today, you have chosen not to sit at home and wallow in despair, but to stand up. To be a voice for justice, to take action, to stand against the oppressor. I appeal to everyone here today to see this as a campaign of two stages. Of course, there must be an immediate ceasefire to prevent further pain and suffering. This is stage one. But as a student of history, I am compelled to ask, what next? What sort of peace will be established? If the status quo is re-established, but in harsher conditions for the Palestinians, then this is not a peace. This is an acceptance that the Palestinians must suffer daily oppression and suffocation as a collective people. This will inevitably result in future violence as they struggle against a colonisation that has plagued them since 1948. And so, as the second stage of campaigning, I would encourage everyone to engage in campaigning beyond the ceasefire for Palestinian rights and to end the colonisation of Palestine. This is the only way to move towards humanity, equality, and ultimately peace. You can do this locally by getting involved at the Friends of Palestine meetings, the Bath Friends of Palestine meetings. The next one is on the 17th of November. Please do look us up on social media. You can see some of our events coming up. And at a national level, by joining groups such as the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, if you haven't already. I will leave you with the words from a Palestinian friend of mine in Jerusalem. I asked him what it means for us to be in solidarity with Palestine. He replied, "It is when you acknowledge that what hurts us hurts you." Thank you. Free Palestine.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for turning out in wonderful numbers with wonderful, warm, beautiful hearts. I'll try to speak louder. Throughout this week, Suella Braverman has been describing the marches taking place up and down the country as hate marches. Right. I say to the Home Secretary, We did not come here to express hate. We came here to express love and compassion for our fellow human beings. For our fellow human beings in the depths of their suffering and despair. We came here to express our yearning that the Palestinian people and all oppressed peoples should live in peace, dignity and freedom in their own homes. And we came here to share our profound grief at the loss of 4,000 innocent children and counting. So many repulsive arguments have been made to justify this slaughter. Amongst the most egregious is the argument that Palestinian children somehow deserve this because of the election of Hamas 17 years ago. There is no justification on this earth to target them or to invoke the obscene notion of collateral damage when they are injured or killed. The lives of all children are precious. That includes the Israeli children who were killed or injured on October the 7th. And when it comes to the abduction and kidnap of children, I include both the Israeli children taken by Hamas and the hundreds of Palestinian children each year taken from their homes by Israeli forces, held without charge for months on end and subject to routine abuse and violence. After the Nazi Holocaust, the world said never again. We repeated those words after the Rwanda genocide in 1994 and on so many other occasions over recent decades, from Argentina to the Philippines. Today, we say loudly and clearly, never again means now. We refuse to live as savages, and we reject ideologies rooted in tribalism and the division of humanity into worthy and unworthy. Finally, I say to Suella Braverman, if there is any hatred in our hearts today, it is hatred for injustice, it is hatred for racism and brutality, and it is hatred for the cowardice, the hypocrisy and the corruption of our political leaders, including the leader of the opposition. They shame us all, and they have brought us to the gutter. We must, and we will rise from that gutter and build a world based on respect for the lives of all. Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Thank you.
Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
Free Palestine! Thanks Imran and thanks Jason for your powerful words. Thanks for your voice. Thanks you all for coming today. Good afternoon, friends and comrades. A history is repeating itself for Palestinians. This is an ongoing catastrophe. I speak today as a Palestinian from Gaza. My family has been living there since 1948. In 1948, my grandparents were forced to flee their homes in Bashir and Baby villages. During Al-Nakba, the catastrophe in English. At that time, Israel practiced ethnic cleansing against indigenous Palestinians and forcefully displaced more than 700,000 indigenous population of their homes and villages. Since then, their right to return, entrenched in the UN Resolution 194, hasn't been fulfilled. That's 75 years ago. For the last 75 years, Israel has been making all possible attempts to force more Palestinians out of their lands. by killing, maiming, home demolition, land confiscation, incarceration, and mass transfer. And this is still happening before our eyes today. All of this is against international law. These processes have been accelerated and intensified since 1967, when Israel occupied the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem. Since 2006, Israel continued to enforce a strict siege on Gaza. That's for 17 years, restricting the access of the population to basic needs, including food, water, electricity, medical care, and mobility. And what is happening in the last 4 weeks in Gaza is another brutal attack on Palestinian lives. In only 28 days, Israel killed more than 10,000 Palestinians. That's 10,000 lives, 10,000 dreams. Including 4,000 kids. Many of them are still under the rubble. Just this morning, Israel bombarded a hospital and a school, places perceived to be safe refuge for those who lost their homes and whose houses has been bombarded. According to the United Nations again, these are grave violations of international law, even the rule of law, even the rules of war. It's appalling that in 2023, we are witnessing another episode of ethnic cleansing before our eyes. Like what happened in 1948, 4 weeks of uncontrolled killings. And all we ask is ceasefire. Ceasefire. Ceasefire now.
Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now!
We marched today in Bath and in other cities in the UK and around the world to raise our voice and to demand an immediate ceasefire. We march today to say that we do not endorse the complicity of our politicians. We march today to demand an end to an occupation that has been going on for decades. Thank you so much.
This morning, like every morning, for the past 28 days, the first thing I did was call my mom. And the first words that left my mouth is, "Are they okay?" They being our loved ones in Gaza, my aunt, her 4 kids, our entire extended family. And every day, the best answer I can hope for is they are alive. Never they're okay. Because how can you be okay when the sound of the bombs that are killing your people are still ringing in your ear? How can you be okay when any second you could run out of food and water? When any second you could lose your connection to the world and be massacred in silence? How can you be okay when in the past 3 weeks, over 9,000 of your people have died, over 20,000 injured? How can you be okay when 50% of the homes in Gaza have been destroyed and yours is probably next? You can't be okay. I have been sick to my stomach for the past month straight. Not only because I'm worried about my own family, but because I am witnessing genocide in real time. And worse yet, watching the world stay silent. In their silence, saying that Palestinian suffering and death is acceptable, is normal. Every day, I scroll through videos of the aftermath of the strikes on hospitals, harrowing videos of parents wailing over the tiny, tiny bodies of their children. That is, if they're lucky enough to have a whole body.
I don't have the luxury to simply grieve with them, because it has become our responsibility to beg the world for empathy. When the media refuses to report the extent of the terror, the responsibility to humanize our people falls on our shoulders. So I ask myself, which of these videos is just devastating enough that people may speak out, may use their voices? Well, everyone here is doing just that. By showing up today, we are working towards our ultimate responsibility to reclaim the narrative. The media is reporting on this as if it is the Israel-Hamas war, as if there are equal strikes on either side of the border and Palestinian civilians are unfortunate collateral. This is not the case. This is not a war. A military superpower, backed by the most powerful nations in the world, is indiscriminately bombing in a place where no one can escape, in a place that has no army of their own. This is not a war. This is not a conflict. This is textbook genocide. When we chant ceasefire now today, we are not calling for a treaty or an end of a war. We are calling on Israel to stop killing Gazans, stop killing their children, and stop destroying their homes. If you take anything from today, I hope it's the importance of the language we use, of being critical of the message we are being fed, and being brave enough to challenge it. People will try to tell you that this is too complicated. You will never fully understand it, therefore you should never speak. They want you to feel uneducated and unable to help because your voices are powerful. But it's not complicated. You don't need a PhD in Middle Eastern studies to understand. When your heart knows that what you're seeing is wrong, it is not only are you allowed to call it out, but you are obligated to. I know for a lot of us, being vocal is scary. We have seen people lose jobs, face harassment, and unimaginable consequences for simply calling for a ceasefire, for simply defending the value of human life. I know this is scary because up until this month, I have been too afraid to speak out. This is the first time that I am allowing myself to be unapologetically and proudly in support of Palestine. For so long, I have been frightened into silence, too afraid of what I stand to lose. But real loss is the Palestinian bloodlines being wiped out in single blows. That is real loss. So when they can't, we speak. We bear the flag. We be their voices. Being here today puts you on the right side of history. Let's stay there. Continue to show up to the protests. Continue to post, to share their stories, to make sure that they are not suffering in silence. Keep being active. I know people are skeptical about the power that these protests, that sharing has, but I promise you, if it wasn't so powerful, they wouldn't be trying so hard to stop us. I want to end, not with my words, but those of my 14-year-old cousin in Gaza. We are not numbers. On the 27th day of the war on Gaza, the number of martyrs exceeded 9,000 and the wounded 20,000. And they are not just numbers. They are human beings with dreams and ambitions and stories. And the world still watches. Prove him wrong. Free Palestine!
My name is Abdul Hafid Al Aswadi. I am from the University of Bath Islamic Society. I'm here to represent them. I'm the chair of the society. I would like to start by words said by a comrade in arms, an icon, a visionary, and dare I say, a terrorist by US standards until 2008, Nelson Mandela. We know too well that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinians. In that light, in the light of such a code, I ask our local MP, what are you doing for the freedom of the Palestinians? How many times have you spoken about a ceasefire? How many times have you truly represented the people standing here today? There's a genocide happening on the other side of the world, while you seem to be bothered about Dominic Cummings and the fear of AI. My question to the MP, is 4,000 children dead enough for you to call for a ceasefire? Please let us know. Is 4,000 enough? My question as a young, ignorant man to the likes of Rishi Sunak and Joe Biden, is it still self-defense? Is it still self-defense?
No! No, it's not!
We're reaching 10,000 dead within a few weeks. It is a genocide. It is but a genocide. Thank you very much. I would have addressed some questions to someone in the Israeli government, but I would need hearts to speak to. Our words are not with you, but with the free of the world. The law-abiding, human rights respecting individuals and institutions around the world, like many standing here today. The people of Gaza need a ceasefire. We need a ceasefire. Everyone around the world needs a ceasefire. We need a ceasefire to be able to look into the mirror, to be able to look at our younger cousins, at our children, and say that we were able to do something to stop the suffering of a fellow human. We need a ceasefire now to be able to look back and not regret another genocide. We've seen many throughout history. We need the ceasefire now, not in a week, not in a month. We need it now. By the minute, by the second, we see people losing their lives. Those events, to very briefly put it, as the Secretary of the UN said, did not happen in a vacuum. And it all starts by the Israeli government simply abiding by international law. That's a very good start. It is not enough to ask people to evacuate a building for you to bomb it. It is absolutely not justifiable. No matter how many times you ask them to leave, it does not justify you bombing the building, or the camp, or the hospital. And I ask anyone who's on the fence, still not sure if this is a genocide or not, if terrorists were to hide in Israel, or in the UK, under those buildings, will it be bombed by the UK government? No! It saddens me greatly to be here, trying to convince the world that we have to call for a ceasefire, not for a war, but for a genocide. We're calling for a ceasefire to stop a genocide, not a war between two equal sides. But, and this is a very, very big but, like every battle to bring more good into this world, and in the most iconic and the least metaphorical way, the free of the world are marching again because they have a dream. Everyone marching here today has a dream a dream deeply rooted in the human rights and dignity. We have a dream that one day all lives are equal. We have a dream that the life of a young child in Gaza means just as much as the life of any child around the world. We have a dream today that one day all states abide by international law. We have a dream today that the people in the West Bank do not have to suffer continuous cleansing and throwing out of their houses. There are no militants in the West Bank. What do we say there? We have a dream today, like the South Africans, and the African Americans, and the Algerians, and the Vietnamese, and the Indians, and the Egyptians, and the Spanish, and among many, that one day the nation will be free. We have a dream today that one day the Palestinian people will be free.
And we also have a dream
Finally,
that the Jewish people will be free.
Absolutely, but this is exactly like someone in a Black Lives Matter protest going like all lives matter. Of course all lives matter, but we're here for the oppressed. Thank you very much. When there is a house burning in the city, you don't go around putting water on all the houses. You go for the house that is burning. Palestinian lives do matter. And finally,
And
it is
Jewish
only...
lives matter.
you don't seem to
well.
get the point, it's alright then. And finally,
No, sorry,
I have to say, and it's only those who dare to dream and hold the hope that win at the very last. Thank you very much.
And the Jews.
Brilliant
and the
speeches,
Jews.
clear, passionate, eloquent, leave us in no doubt what we have to do. I want to say something first of all about Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations. He said a few words, made a speech in which he rightly condemned the brutality of the killings of Israeli civilians and young people. And I think we would all agree with that. And then he said, of course this didn't happen in a vacuum. There is a context. And the context is the theft of Palestinian land, destruction of homes, wanton killings, blockade of Gaza, ethnic cleansing, apartheid. Yes, there is a context. And for that, Israel demanded his expulsion. And of course, they were supported by our politicians to their shame, and they're saying they do not speak in our name. They may speak in your name, sir, but they don't speak in ours. And where are we now? Where are we now? Well, people have spoken very eloquently about the massacre that is happening. 10,000, 4,000 children. We've seen the bombs fall. We've seen the bodies carried through. We've seen people scrabbling amongst the stones to find the bodies of their relatives, their children. It is heartbreaking. Images from that just stick in your minds, don't they? I'll tell you what sticks in mind, and they're just details. It's the knowledge that people are having their limbs amputated with no anesthetic, because Israel has closed down the supply of electricity or bombed it or destroyed the hospitals. Women are having caesarean sections with no anesthetic. Think of that. And two images from a report this morning. A lone child, boy, aged 11 or thereabouts, lying in a bed on his own in hospital, injured, on his own, because all his family are dead. Another image, 4 or 5-year-old little girl in a bed, on her own, a rag wrapped round the stump of one of her legs. And to think this is done now is so shocking, it's so disgusting, it is unbearable. And what of our politicians? What of our politicians?
They don't give a shit.
Sunak and Starmer, the terrible twins, the Tweedledum and Tweedledee of British politics.
Well said.
For them to show the green light to this, for them to say go ahead, what kind of people are they? Have they no humanity? Have they no thought in their hearts and their brains of what they are condoning? These are war crimes, and if you collude with a crime, you're a war criminal yourself. And of course they always have the same lines, don't they? Israel has a right to defend itself. Oh yeah? What about Palestinians? Do they not have a right to defend themselves? And if they do, how do they do it? They have no arms, they have no weapons, they have no organization for military fight back. They are helpless captives by this terrorist state. And it is based on race. We know it is based on race. And does that make them a racist state too? Yes. Well, up to you to decide.
One entirely.
So there are, I'm sure you've got a question, sir, but hang on to it for the minute, you'll have your turn. I see you sitting down there. Okay, take it easy. Yeah, so the questions there are not asked. And I wait in vain for the BBC to ask that question. How do Palestinians defend themselves? Another question that they always, or another point they always make is that Israel has a right to defend its borders. Yes, but not to steal other people's land. And what are the borders? What are the borders of Palestine? Where are they? They've been eaten away, taken away, until there's a tiny, tiny percentage of the land the Palestinians were given, even in that flawed settlement in '48. Tiny, tiny percentage, and the world stands by and does nothing. Intolerable. And Starmer is supposed to be a clever lawyer, doesn't know his international law presumably, has no care for human rights, happy to see them broken. It's my view, and I don't know if it's yours, that we can never, ever vote for these politicians again. Never, ever. And one quick word about the media, because we know how they control consciousness or try to control opinion. And the BBC is interesting because they are meant to be the gold standard, and whatever they allow, we know the right-wing press enlarge and inflame, and other broadcasters too. Now this has been a tricky time for the BBC, because when during the Hamas attack it was very simple, you know, all the right was on one side. Now they are facing this massacre, and of course they have to report from the front line. So yes, we do get reports, and the incidents I've referred to are from BBC reports. But notice this: you hear Israeli politicians and commentators for the horrors that are happening. These are reported from the NGOs, from the charities, and yes, from Palestinians themselves sometimes. Never from Palestinian politicians who will speak for them, who will make an analysis, who will call out Israel in the way the speakers have called out Israel today. You don't hear that. You just hear the suffering, and the suffering, my God, is enough. But you don't hear the political analysis. And I'll tell you something else you never see or hear. And that's those brave Jewish people who absolutely say what has been said here. They're not allowed to speak. And that's important for two reasons. First of all, it is the truth, and we need to hear it. But secondly, it is the answer to anti-Semitism. Because this is not an issue about race in the question of who opposes Israel. Many brave Jewish people do, as we all know, and many will be here. They should be heard. So finally, to wrap up, absolutely an immediate, unconditional ceasefire. I think our demand should be that then, once the ceasefire happens, then there is an exchange of prisoners and hostages, as there has been before. Then that exchange takes place. Then there has to be proper negotiations. And I suggest this has to be through the United Nations, not driven by the United States, who are propping up Israel. And not driven by this country, which has an arms deal with Israel. And God knows what British-made arms are involved in killing Palestinians now. This is intolerable. What must be central to those negotiations are the rule of international law, respect for human rights and the Geneva Conventions, a return to the original borders, the forcible removal of the settlers and the terrible damage they have done, and then a proper negotiation for a secure future. But it must be based on international law. It must be based on the removal of the settlers, and then we can have peace. Solidarity, free Palestine!
We're going to have one more speaker, then we're going to have our minute silence, and then we march.
My name is Muhammad Gamal, and as you can tell, I am a Muslim. And as a Muslim, I begin my greeting you all with the Islamic greeting, peace be upon you. This is how much importance Islam accords to peace. It takes it as its form of greeting, but at the very same time, Islam takes justice as one of its core values. بِالْعَدْلِ قَامَتِ السَّمَاوَاتُ وَالْأَرْضِ. It is upon justice that the heavens and the earth have been established. I grew up in Egypt, and Egypt is an Arab country. Up until today, I still have vivid memories of a Palestinian female journalist. Her name was Shireen Abu Aqila. Do you remember Shireen? Shireen was a Palestinian, Arab, Christian, Catholic journalist who was killed in cold blood doing her job as an innocent journalist. I literally grew up with her voice. And it saddens me. She was killed in the prime of her age. And such is the scenario today. Back then, I used to think the Palestinian question is an Arab question. Until I came to the UK, a country that I take as my second home, 10 years ago. And it was here, in a country that celebrates multiculturalism, and I hope remains so, and it will. It was here when I mingled with other Muslims from across the globe. It was then when I came to know that the Palestinian cause matters to every Muslim. But even further, when I engage with non-Muslims, with people of non-faith traditions at all, I realize that this is not just a Muslim issue, it's not just an Arab issue, it's a question of humanity. Really. So, the Palestinian cause, wallahi, it challenges us to the core. If you're not an Arab, if you're not a Muslim, you're a human, and you need to really take this seriously. This is what we need to share. In the last few weeks, people developed this sort of admiration and they have commonly used this chant. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, right? What does this mean? We don't ask what it means. Prior to 1948, what happened? What was the scenario? From the river, the Jordan River, up until the Mediterranean Sea, this was Palestine. It was not a Muslim land. It was a land that had Jews, Christians, Muslims living together in peace. Where is this peace today? That's why we are here for. So, your voices matters. Your voices matters. And in the midst of this grim time, it delights us that we are here from all walks of life to stand up in this position. And if there is hope for the future, it is in the hope of this unity and in this inclusivity that we celebrate. And we're here for ceasing the fire. Thank you so much.
We're now going to have a minute's silence to remember all those that have killed and are continuing to suffer with the violence. Thank you.
Every single one does deserve a round of applause, so please give yourselves a round of applause! You have come out, you've taken time out, you stood under the rain, you stood for the justice of the people. You should be very proud of yourselves. So very, very well done, everyone. Next. As of always, the battle for justice is never done. Next, London is waiting for 1 million people to march on the 11th of November. Last week marked the biggest pro-Palestine protest in the country with 500,000 people, 500,000. And like I said, next, 11th of November in London, we urge every single one of you to make a stand there, to make it the biggest pro-Palestine protest this country has ever seen. Thank you very much. And finally, I was told to clarify one chant. The chant that was very famous, in our thousands and in our millions, we are all Palestinians. The idea is that we all stand with the Palestinians to the part that we are almost them. We almost stand with them, and anyone who is Palestinian is someone who's standing for the Palestinians. Thank you very much. For the people with a little bit of coke left in them, after today, there are buckets and there are QR codes to gather some donations to go straight to Gaza. So please donate freely. In our thousands, in our millions, we are all Palestinians. In our thousands, in our millions, we are all Palestinians. In our thousands, in our millions, we are all Palestinians. In our millions, in our billions, we are all Palestinians. In our millions, in our billions, we are all Palestinians. Let us hear you. In our thousands, in our millions, we are all Palestinians. In our thousands, in our millions, we are all Palestinians. In our thousands, in our millions, we are all Palestinians. In our millions, in our billions, we are all Palestinians. And in our millions, we'll be in London next week on the 11th of November. Please be there!